Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of God, who is the most beneficent and merciful. Students, I am Amjad Ali Shah, lecturer in philosophy, Department of Islamic and Pakistan Studies, Kohat University of Science and Technology. So here is our course title, Introduction to Logic. The course code is PHI102. Our lecture number is 14, and our today's topic of discussion is what is categorical syllogism. So here are the outlines. What is syllogism? In this lecture, we will discuss what is syllogism, and we will also discuss what is categorical syllogism, the terms used in that categorical syllogism as well, and what is the form of syllogism, and lastly, we will discuss the outcome. Student, you must know that in the previous lecture, we discussed those 4 types of categorical proposition. We discussed its quality and quantity and distribution of term. Then we had a diagrammatic representation of those 4 categorical propositions. So in this lecture, that is very much connected to the previous lecture. Though some of the topics are I skip them voluntarily because you will lose that connection as well. We will discuss those topics later on, like what is immediate inference, what is immediate inference, what is traditional square of opposition, what is conversion, what is obversion, and what is contraposition. Now let's move to our topic, what is categorical syllogism. Sure. First of all, what is syllogism? Syllogism is a deductive argument which consists of 3 propositions. Now here there are different types of syllogism. We have hypothetical syllogism, we have disjunctive syllogism. In this hypothetical syllogism, just have a look at this. If the second native told the truth, then only one native is politician. The second native told the truth, therefore only one native is politician. Now the very first premise is hypothetical, and we call it is a major premise. So in syllogism, in hypothetical syllogism, the major premise is hypothetical proposition. The second premise is a simple proposition, and so is the conclusion. We have disjunctive syllogism as well. Either Akram or Farhan has secured the highest grade in the exam. This is basically a disjunctive proposition, and that's why we call it disjunctive syllogism, because the very major premise is disjunctive, and the second premise is a simple one. Akram has not secured the highest grade, therefore Farhan has secured the highest grade in the exam. Now, what is categorical syllogism? It is a deductive argument consisting of 3 categorical propositions that together contains exactly 3 terms. Now this is the very important part. In order to understand what is syllogism, categorical syllogism, we will have to understand those 3 terms as well. So here we have an example: all primates are mammals, all human beings are primates, therefore all human beings are mammals. So in this syllogism we have different terms, like we have term primates. Actually primates, according to biology, primates are those animals which are highly evolved, like chimpanzees, monkeys, human beings, dolphin. So all these mammals, they in the race of evolution, they are in a very advanced stage, and they are usually considered as the most intelligent animals as well. So all primates are mammals, all human beings are primates. So we have a term like primates, then we have a term mammals, we have a term human beings, then we have a conclusion: all human beings are mammals. Now let's analyze it further. In order to understand those 3 terms, first of all we will have to identify the conclusion of the syllogism. So here is the conclusion: all human beings are mammals. So in the conclusion, the subject of the conclusion is human being, and its predicate term is mammals. So as far as the major term is concerned, now here I have mentioned it, the predicate of the conclusion is known as major term. So mammals is actually the major term. And we have a subject of the conclusion as well, which is highlighted as purple. Human beings, that is the minor term. Now in this syllogism, if you look in this syllogism, we have the major term in the very first premise, and then we have the minor term in the second premise, that is human beings. Apart from these two terms, major term and minor term, there is another term that is known as middle term, primates, which appears in both of the premises. That in the first premise, in the very beginning of the first premise, primates appear, and appears in the second premise, it appears in the last. So the function of the middle term is to link these two propositions. Now these two categorical propositions are linked together by this middle term. Now we have three terms like major terms, minor terms, and middle terms. If you look at the conclusion is SP. This is the predicate, this is the subject. So here the conclusion goes like this: all human beings are mammals. Now the first premise in which the major term appears, it is known as major premise. Like all primates are mammals, it's the major premise because the major term appears in the first premise. The second premise is all human beings are primates, it's the minor premise because the minor term appears in the second premise. And lastly, we have the conclusion. In conclusion, both the minor and the major terms appear. Now, what is the form of syllogism? As far as the form of syllogism is concerned, it means what is the basic structure of a syllogism. So the form further consists of two things. One is moved, and the second thing is figure. By moved, we mean usually what type of categorical propositions are used in that particular syllogism. Either it's universal affirmative or universal negative, or it may be particular affirmative, or it may be particular negative as well. By figure, we means what is the position of the middle term in the premises. So we have four different types of figures of the middle term, which will appear in the coming slide. So here, if you look at the first proposition, that is universal affirmative, we denote it by the alphabet A. In the previous lecture, I have already discussed what is categorical proposition and why we name it is like A. We have the second premise, that is again universal affirmative. We have the third proposition, that is conclusion, that is A. So mood is actually A. So as far as the mood is concerned, we may have different types of mood. Like we may have an argument, we may have we may have a categorical syllogism. The mood may be like EAA, which means the first premise is universal negative, the second one is universal affirmative, and the conclusion is universal affirmative as well. We have in this syllogism, the first premise is universal negative, the second one is universal affirmative, and the conclusion is universal negative. AIO, the first premise is universal affirmative, and the second premise is particular affirmative, and the conclusion is particular negative. We have OAA, that is the first premise is particular negative, the second premise is universal negative, and the conclusion is universal negative as well, etc. So there are different moods. You can make different moods if you add three categorical proposition. So it makes very numerous moods. Next to it is, what is the form of syllogism? Now here we have four figures. MP, which means there is a middle term and there is a major term which is denoted by P. as we have already discussed it in the previous slides, then we have S, M, S, P. Now, if you see in the very first figure, the position of the middle term is like this. It means that the middle term appears in the very beginning of the first premise and it appears in the end of the second premise. We have the second figure as well, in which the middle term appears at the end of both of the premises. We have the third figure as well, in which the middle term appears in the very beginning of the both of the premises. And we have the fourth figure as well, in which it appears like this. If you want to remember it, it makes a shape like W of the English alphabet. This is figure 1, this is figure 2, this is figure 3, and this is figure 4. Now let's analyze this syllogism. All primates are mammals, all human beings are primates, therefore all human beings are mammals. Now if you see the middle term, it's like this. So it's actually the first figure. So the form is actually, as I mentioned earlier, that form consists of both mood and figure. The form is actually AAA1 of this syllogism. Next we have form AA2. Now here you can see primates. This is the major term, this is the minor term. Again we have this minor term, here it is the major term and the middle term, or here. So it is figure 2. So the syllogism, the form of syllogism will be AAA2. Next we have the same terms of those terms like primates, mammals, and human beings, which are used in a categorical syllogism, but the position of the middle term is a different one. It's in the third figure. The middle term appears in the very beginning of the both of premises. Primates, here you see highlighted as green. So its form is AAA3. Next to it is figure 4. Now here is the figure 4. If you see primates appears at the end of the first premise and it appears in the very beginning of the second premise. So the form is AAA4. Now, keeping in mind the form, we may have different types of syllogism. And if you add if you keep this form, I mean both moved and figure, so we get 256 types of syllogism. So here we have another syllogism, no mammals are primates. I'm using those same terms, but I'm just changing the quality and quantity of those categorical propositions. Now here we have E, that is universal negative, no mammals are primates, all primates are human beings, and therefore all human beings are mammals. So the first premise is universal negative, so it means it's E. The second one is universal affirmative, A, and the third one is conclusion, that is also universal affirmative. So we have the form like EAA4 because it's figure 4. Next to it, we have, let's have another example in order to understand it fully. So no mammals are primates, some primates are human beings. So therefore all human beings are mammals. So the first premise is universal negative, E, second one is particular affirmative, I, which is the minor premise as well, and third is the conclusion, therefore all human beings are mammals. So we get the form like EIA4. Next to it, we have another example, that is IIO. The first premise is particular affirmative, and the second one is particular affirmative, and the conclusion is particular negative. And the figure of the syllogism is figure 1. In the previous slide, you can confirm it in the previous slides, because in the figure 1, the middle term appears in the very beginning of the first premise, and it appears at the end of the second premise. So IIO1. These are the references. A Concise Introduction to Logic by Patrick J. Hurley. The edition is 11th one, and it was published by Wordsworth in 2012. And we have the course book as well, that is Introduction to Logic by Irving M. Copy, Carl Cohen, Kenneth McMahon, and the edition is 14th one. So students, from this lecture, the outcome of this lecture is that today we have discussed about categorical syllogism or other types of syllogism. This is a type of argument. Categorical syllogism is a kind of deductive argument, and we will check in the coming chapters, in the coming lectures, we will check the validity and invalidity of all these categorical syllogism by means of Venn diagram technique. So we have already discussed diagrammatic representation of individual proposition like A, E, I, O. So in the coming lecture, we will know about the technique, how to apply that technique, and how to know about these different forms of syllogism, different types of syllogism. So thank you very much indeed.